the synonyms and the translation and purport. Yat tad brahma param shukshmam ashunyam shunya kalpitam bhagavan vasudeveti yam grinanti hi sattvataha. Yat, that which, tat, such, Brahma Param, Para Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, Shukshmam, spiritual, beyond all material conceptions, Ashunyam, not personal or void, Shunyam Kalpitam, imagined to be void by less intelligent men, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev, Krishna, Iti, thus, Yam, whom, Gurnanti, sing about, he, indeed, Sattvataha, pure devotees. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev, Krishna, is extremely difficult to understand for unintelligent men who accept him as impersonal or void, which he is not. The Lord is therefore understood and sung about by pure devotees. Okay, the purport. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. The absolute truth is realized in three phases as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the origin of everything. Brahman is a partial representation of Bhagavan, and Vasudev, the super soul living everywhere and in everyone's heart, is also an advanced realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when one comes to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti, when one realizes that Vasudeva is both Paramatma and the impersonal Brahman, he is then in perfect knowledge. Krishna is therefore described by Arjuna as Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. The word Param Brahma referred to the shelter of the impersonal Brahman and also of the all-pervading Supersoul. When Krishna says Taktva Deham Punar Janma Naiti Mam Eti, this means that the perfect devotee, after perfect realization, returns home back to Godhead. Maharaj Katvanga accepted the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and because of his full surrender, he achieved perfection. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled The Dynasty of Ansuman. Let me just read the translation one more time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva Krishna, is extremely difficult to understand for unintelligent men who accept him as impersonal or void, which he is not. The Lord is therefore understood and sung about by pure devotees. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Paramami Haripriye. Vanchakalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyev Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So first I'd like to offer my dandavats and my ask for blessings of all the senior Vaishnavas who are present here, that I may be able to say something beneficial to everyone, but mostly to myself for purification. Okay, so this is the last verse of this chapter, and in this chapter, it's first of all, it started out with talking about Bhagirath, who brought the Ganges down to the earth by arranging for the Lord Shiva to be able to receive the Ganga, and then for it to wash his ancestors' ashes, and so he could basically liberate them or elevate them when they weren't able to be because the Ganga was not flowing there. And then it ends with his descendant, Maharaj Katvanga, who was a great warrior, and he pleased the demigods by his activities, and they asked him for a benediction, and he said, "I'd like to know, when I'm going to, how long I'm going to live." And so they said, "You only have a moment left." And so he very quickly, went, and he went back to his kingdom, and this is what it's describing, how he was, what his realizations were at the end of his life. So, I mean, it's a really cool kind of realization, or kind of a story, that the story in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that, he only has one more moment to live, and what does he do? Just like us, we don't know, there's no guarantee how long we have in this life. You can't guarantee the next minute even. So it's a very telling story. So I got a few points from this purport, because Srila Prabhupada quotes a number of verses. So first, I'd like to kind of explain the three features of Godhead. So Brahman is the impersonal feature, which is the all-pervading feature of Krishna. And so we call that the Brahma Jyoti as well, that the effulgence that's emanating. And then the second feature is the localized feature, which means Paramatma, or the Lord within everyone's heart. So in all living entities, you see that picture in the Bhagavad Gita, that I think it's the Pandita Samadarshana verse, that the sadhu is seeing all the different, the elephant, the dog eater, the tree, the plants, everything. Krishna is within them all. So that's why he sees everyone with equal vision, right? And then Bhagavan, which is the supreme personality of Godhead, the actual personality, Krishna as who he is. And this is for the devotees, this is the most important feature of Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes the example is given of the sun. So the Brahma Jyoti is considered like the rays of the sun. And then the Paramatma is considered like the planet, the sun, just the sun itself. And then Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, is considered like actually within the sun, there is entities that are living there. There's a city, actually. It's like a planet, and it's I might have got the Paramatma part wrong, I'm not sure. But anyways, the point is that the Bhagavan is considered like the details within the planet of the sun. So how we say it is that Krishna, the personality of Godhead, has his things that he likes, the activities that he performs, how he's thinking, what he doesn't like, who he associates with. So this is actually a really, really high conception of Godhead that we don't really find in other places besides the Srimad Bhagavatam and our Shastras. Kind of, it goes to the extent of, okay, God is everywhere and he's omniscient, and that's the end. But what does he do? What does he like? What activities does he perform? What pastimes does he have? Who does he associate with? These things are very, actually very secret, and also very particular to our Bhakti Shastras. So it's a really rare thing, actually, in this Krishna conception that we have got from our acharyas. This is a very rare thing within the world of theism. So let's look at a few verses that Srila Prabhupada quotes here. So the first being the 1 to 11, Vadanti Tattva Vidas, which is a really famous verse. So the translation is, learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So as I mentioned, these three aspects, now Srila Prabhupada kind of describes them as well. He says the absolute truth is both subject and object, and there's no qualitative difference there. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, the localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and Bhagavan by the devotees. So that's the point, that the students of the Upanishads, they realize Godhead as the impersonal Brahman. And the yogis who are meditating, they're trying to realize the Lord within the heart. And the devotees, the bhaktas, they're trying to realize Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. In devotion, that's the key, the devotees. And then he says, in other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and the impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. Okay, that's the example. The sun god is the analogy to Bhagavan. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization, but those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision. So this is a key point here, that that the different students of these different aspects, they argue that theirs is the best. They argue in favor of their own respective realizations. But he says here that the perfect seers know that they're just different perspectives seen from the different angles of vision. But of course, we as devotees, we want to see the personality of Godhead. We want to please the personality of Godhead, because that is the most, personally, that's the most relatable to us, because as devotees, we don't offer, flute and clothing and articles of food and on all kinds of pleasing things that we give to a person, Krishna. We don't offer that to the Brahma Jyoti, right? So, and then he goes on further to say, right, actually, we can go on to the next verse that he quotes, which is, he talks about what Arjuna says, he calls Krishna Param Brahma Param Dhamma Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. So the translation, this is from the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, text 12 through 13. He says, the translation is, Arjuna said, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa confirm this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. So he says, purport, in these two verses, the Supreme Lord gives a chance to the Mayavadi philosopher, for here it is clear that the Supreme is different from the individual soul. So the individual soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are not the same, as the Mayavadis say. Arjuna, after hearing the essential four verses of the Bhagavad Gita in this chapter, became free from all doubts and accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He at once boldly declares, you are Param Brahma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In many places, actually, the Lord is glorified as being the Supreme Brahman, the Para Brahman. It's a way of glorifying. And previously, Krishna stated that he is the originator of everything and everyone. Every demigod and every human being is dependent on him. Men and demigods, out of ignorance, think they are absolute and independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, and then he says, this is relating to what we're talking about. In the Kena Upanishad, it stated that the Supreme Brahman is the rest for everything. And Krishna has already explained that everything is resting on him. He is Bhagavan, is speaking and saying that I am the supreme Brahman. Brahman comes from me, as that verse in the Bhagavad Gita we'll talk about. Brahma no hi pratishtaham, that I am the source of Brahman. The Mundaka Upanishad confirms that the Supreme Lord, in whom everything is resting, can be realized only by those who engage constantly of thinking of him. This constant thinking of Krishna is smaranam, one of the methods of devotional service. It is only by devotional service to Krishna that one can understand his position and get rid of this material body. So this is another great point, that we want to realize Bhagavan. It says all in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada's quoting it here, to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he only can be realized by devotional service, not by our own, study or like mental gymnastics or kind of our own effort. But he reveals himself by being pleased by devotees' devotional service. Okay, so then, here's another part which I wanted to go into was in the same verse, the end of the purport says, here Arjuna expresses himself through the grace of Krishna. If we want to understand Bhagavad Gita, we should accept the statements in these two verses. This is called the parampara system, acceptance of the disciplic succession. Unless one is in the disciplic succession, he cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita. It is not possible by so-called academic education. Unfortunately, those proud of their academic education, despite so much evidence in the Vedic literature, stick to their obstinate conviction that Krishna is an ordinary person. So in the original verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's saying those who are intelligent, here, let's read it again. It's Krishna is extremely difficult to understand for unintelligent men who accept him as impersonal or void, which he is not. So the question is, how do we understand Krishna? And Prabhupada says it in this purport, through disciplic succession. So the different types of realizing the knowledge. So there's two types, avaroha panta and aroha panta. So avaroha means let's start with aroha. Aroha means that we try to gain knowledge with our own senses. So from the bottom up, we try to understand things with our senses, with our intelligence. But actually, this is an imperfect way to get knowledge. Why? Because the senses, because of the four defects that the human being has, the imperfect senses. Our senses are imperfect. I don't know what's going on I can't tell you what's going on in the next room because I don't have the senses to understand, to see it. I can even hear it because of the wall is there. So our senses are imperfect. There's so many examples we can give of the senses being imperfect. The cheating propensity. Every human being has the propensity to cheat. As we see that in our society completely all the time, there's a tendency to cheat. There's a tendency to commit mistakes. We cannot say that everything we do is perfect, that we're not going to commit mistakes. Everyone commits mistakes. And the tendency to be illusioned. Also, that's there in our, we can experience that in our lives as well. We have a tendency to not understand, to be illusioned. So if we try to gain knowledge through this aroha panta, through this bottom up kind of way, then you're not going to get perfect knowledge. So what is the Shastras and what is Srila Prabhupada here in that purport trying to say when it's talking about the disciplic succession is the avaroha panta, which is essentially Shabda Brahman, or perfect knowledge coming from the top down, from disciplic succession. So this is free from all these defects. From these four defects, it's actually free. It's free from that because it's coming down in disciplic succession through pure transparent via media of the absolute truth. So we have to understand that we would like to understand Krishna and the Shastras. We have to try to gain knowledge that way, not by our own. If you're reading Shastras and if you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, then that is what you are taking advantage of, the Avaroha Panta, Shabda Brahman. And then within that whole scope is Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. We say the Guru, the spiritual master, Sadhu, the saintly persons, and Shastra, the scriptures. These are the checks and balances when it comes to things that may not be able to be understood by just reading Shastra, because by just reading Shastra, it's not you not be able to understand it. You actually have to take shelter of Guru, and you have to take shelter of sadhus who can explain what the Shastra is saying, because some points in the Shastra there are difficult to understand. So there has to be that checks and balances, that three-pronged, you could say, way of understanding. Let's look at another verse that Srila Prabhupada was quoting here. He also quoted Janma Karma Chame Divyam, a very famous verse, as everyone knows. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this mature world, but attains my eternal abode, or Arjuna. And then in the purport, he talks about the impersonalists and the yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many, many births. Even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal Brahma Jyotir of the Lord, so this relates to back to the original verse, is only partial. Merging into the impersonal Brahma Jyoti of the Lord is only partial, and there's a risk of returning to this material world. But the devotee, simply by understanding the transcendental nature of the body and activities of the Lord, attains the abode of the Lord after ending this body, and does not run the risk of returning to this material world. So this is another key point, that the yogis who perform their austerities to realize the supreme Brahman, the Brahma Jyoti, when they actually attain the Brahma Jyoti, they're at risk of falling down from there. Why is that? Because the soul requires relationship, right? In this world, we see that the main thing everyone is looking for is love and relationship and beauty, and Krishna has all that to offer in his Bhagavan conception. But in the Brahma Jyoti, there's always that risk of falling down because that need of the soul is not being met. They actually go there and there's actually nothing to do there in the Brahma Jyoti. You're just, there is some Brahmananda, of course, but as the Shastra says, that there is that risk of falling down from there because there is no variegatedness, there's no variety, there's no relationship. But then he talks about what's the praising the devotee here. But the devotee doesn't have any risk of coming down to this material world after ending his body, because he has developed a relationship with the Lord. And what is the Lord? The Lord has so much variety and so much relation. There's so much different relationship there, as we see in the different ways of relating with Krishna. The neutrality, in servitorship, in parental affection, in conjugal love, in sakyaras, in friendship. There's so many ways that the soul can actually relate with the Lord in the highest forms of prema. This is a very high thing, but that's our prospect. Our prospect is that we want to attain that. Not our prospect as devotees, as Vaishnavas, is not to merge into the Lord. And sometimes that can actually be not We don't think of it as, okay, I feel like I want to merge. But if we have this conception of, I want to stop all suffering in my life. I'm suffering so much. I just want to go back to Godhead and not suffer anymore. This is actually more on the side of that we want to merge into the Brahma Jyoti. It's not that, it's not the viewpoint of I want to serve the Lord unconditionally and uninterruptedly. I want to serve the Lord no matter where I am. This is actually what the pure devotee, how the pure devotee thinks. He doesn't think I want to stop suffering. That's because that's a selfish desire to stop suffering. So it's nuanced. It's not that we might outwardly think like very clearly, I want to merge into Brahma Jyoti. But there are devotees that think, I just want to stop suffering. And that's also not the correct mindset. We don't want to, there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Swargapavarka Narkeshu Apitulyata Darshina, that the devotee doesn't care if they are in Swarga or Naraka, meaning the heavenly planets, or hell. They just want to be where they serve the Lord. It doesn't matter where they are. That's why it doesn't matter if we're here or there. We want to serve Krishna no matter where we are. We want to serve him unconditionally. That should be our thinking. Of course, it's easy to say, but hard to do. But as we advance in Krishna consciousness, then as we move towards bhakti, to pure love, pure bhakti, then this is what the mindset is. And we see that so much in our shastras, different examples of that. Yeah. So let's look at another verse that kind of illustrates really nicely what I'm talking about. So this is in the 10th canto, 8th chapter, 21st verse. Now this is talking about Krishna and Balaram and how they started to crawl. So this is really interesting how I'm going to connect this with what we're talking about. Well, I'm not connecting, actually. Srila Prabhupada is. So actually, no, did Srila Prabhupada write this? Yes, he did. It wasn't yet the purports that were written by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Okay, translation. After a short time passed, both brothers, Rama and Krishna, began crawl on the ground of Vraja with the strength of their hands and knees, and thus enjoyed their childhood play. So then the first part of the purport says, one Brahmana devotee says, Shrutim apare smritin itare bharatam anye bhajantu bhavabhita aham iha nandam vande yasya linde param brahma. So listen to this really carefully. So the translation of this verse that Srila Prabhupada quotes, I think it's from the Padyavali, and spoken by Raghupati Upadhyay, maybe. Anyways, please listen to this. This is really nice. Let others, fearing material existence, worship the Vedas, the Vedic supplementary Puranas, and the Mahabharata. But I shall worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard the supreme Brahman is crawling. Isn't that beautiful? I'll read it again. Let others, fearing material existence, worship the Vedas, the Vedic supplementary Puranas, and the Mahabharata. But I shall worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard the supreme Brahman is crawling. So then Prabhupada says, for a highly exalted devotee, Kaivalya, merging into the existence of the Brahman, appears no better than hell, narakayate. But here one can simply think of the crawling of Krishna and Balaram in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj and always merge in transcendental happiness. As long as one is absorbed in thoughts of Krishna Leela, especially Krishna's childhood pastimes, as Parikshit Maharaj desired to be, one is always merged in actual Kaivalya. Therefore, Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of Narada, so that anyone can take advantage of this literature, think of Krishna's pastimes, and always be liberated. So this is what the mood of the devotee is, that I don't want to merge into the Supreme Brahman. I will worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard the Supreme Brahman is crawling. It's really key that he says that the Supreme Brahman is crawling, because that's Krishna. Krishna is the source of the Supreme Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Krishna is the source of everything. He's considered, omniscient, Supreme Brahman, the creator of everything. He's just the, when we think of God in certain beginning conceptions, it's like God is everywhere. God is the biggest. He's the oldest. He's the greatest. But the devotee says, I understand that, but I will worship Nanda Maharaj. This is in whose courtyard the Supreme Brahman, Krishna, is crawling. So this is like a beautiful expression of the devotee, of Krishna's personality, that we want to, all we're interested in is serving Krishna, pleasing Krishna. Even though Krishna is so great and so big and so in so many ways, he's just the largest, but we see that, but we don't want him like that. Just like the residents of Vrindavan, like they told Nanda Maharaj, your son, he's like a demigod. He killed that demon, and he killed so many demons, and he helped us so much. He must be a demigod, or he must be Narayan. And Nanda Maharaj said, that may be true, but in the nighttime, when there's a lot of thunder or there's a big storm, he comes to our room because he's scared. It's written somewhere that he said that. And so you're telling me that this kid, my son, who I love so much, he's Narayan, but yet I'm telling you that he comes in, he's afraid of thunder and lightning. So this is the Vrajavasis thinking, that okay, he may be the Lord, but we don't see him like that, because how can there be that relationship, that and understanding the pastimes of Krishna, to say that he's Narayan, or he says the Supreme Brahman, it kind of puts a damper on that rasa that the devotees have, that the Vrajavasis have with Krishna. And this is a very high topic, but it's nice to see what our prospect is in relating with Krishna, or relating with God. So I guess that's my main point. Let me look at my notes again. Understanding the Lord through devotional service. So how do we get to that point of understanding Krishna's personality? Is through the disciplic succession, and through devotional service, and through revelation. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? That's this, as the saying goes. Accept Guru and be connected with the Avaroha Panta, the top-down way of understanding, and it will be revealed to us. And that's another point. We cannot actually understand this with our own intelligence. This has to be revealed to us. When we please the Lord, as it says in the Shastra, Atashi Krishna Namadi, that's a really nice verse. Atashi Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahamindriya sevan mukhi jivido swayam eva sparatyada. That's from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, as quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service. So that is the main point. We can't understand Krishna by our own senses. We have to use our senses. We have to spiritualize our senses. And when we do that, when the Lord is pleased, he reveals himself to the devotee. Because what does it mean when the Lord reveals himself? He doesn't reveal himself to everyone. Just as when he came in the Mahabharata, when he came as the peacemaker to the court of Dhritarashtra, and he actually showed his Virat Rupa. Duryodhana and all those didn't see it. They didn't see. They just saw, okay, he's an ordinary person. But who saw the actual Virat Rupa? Bhishma Dev, because he was a devotee, and because Krishna revealed himself to, as it says in this verse, he reveals himself. And another point is that when he reveals himself, that's his. I think it's in the Nectar of Devotion that the last point of devotional service is one is able to the devotee controls the Lord with his love. The Lord is controlled. How can the Lord, who's the Param Brahma, be controlled? By love. He's controlled by love. And so he doesn't give that out very easily. He doesn't reveal himself very easily because he can be controlled by that love. And only the pure devotees can control the Lord through their love. So I guess the main takeaway here would be that of the three conceptions of God, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, the devotees worship Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because that is where the relationship is. And we want to please the Lord and that be revealed to us, that that love of Krishna, that prema, be revealed to us. And how do we do that? Through following the orders of the disciplic succession and the orders of the spiritual master. Be connected with that avaroha panta, that the knowledge and the shastra will be revealed to us through our devotional service, because the Lord can only be realized through devotional service. So I want to stop there and see if there's any points of discussion. I know there was a lot, kind of like a very roundabout way of getting there, but that was my main point. I hope that came through.
Thank you, Namarasa, for again a Shastric lecture. Especially loved the section when you quoted how I'm not sure of the author's name, like how the author said, like, I would worship Nanda Maharaj in whose courtyard Supreme Brahman is calling. That's a beautiful verse and connected the points so nicely. I got a direct question.
Sure.
I'm just able to type it back because I cannot copy it. How is Brahman and Paramatma realization? I think they meant Paramatma because the spelling is something wrong. Paramatma realization included in the Bhagavan realization.
How is it realized? I mean, how is it within that realization?
Yeah, because it's generally, I am assuming, because it's generally considered Bhagavan realization as the complete. Right. And we all like don't do anything separately to realize Brahman or Paramatma. That means like within the process of Bhakti, it's included. How is it included? Is what is the question?
That's a technical question that I'm not sure of, but if I could maybe give my viewpoint, is that Krishna or Bhagavan, he has his effulgence, and Brahmajyoti is considered his effulgence. So if you're trying to understand Bhagavan, then Paramatma is within that, because it's his effulgence, and the localized Paramatma is the localized form of Krishna. So when it's described what the Paramatma looks like, it's that he looks like Narayan within the heart. And so it's Krishna sitting within the heart of all of us. So that's connected with Bhagavan. I mean, that's what I can say. I don't want to say something that is not according to our shastras, but okay. It says the chat. I think the chat says that Goroshan Prabhu has a very nice answer to this question that I request you share. Please share it, Prabhu. Yes, thank you.
I really don't know what Athena thought.
Please, Prabhu.
No, I don't think so. Is there anything else that you would like to share, or other devotees, if they would like to unmute themselves to ask a question or
Athena
share?
has raised her hand.
I think Gausharam Prabhu is playing dumb, because Gausharam Prabhu, I asked you this exact question in your Srimad Bhagavatam class, and you answered it so nicely. Unless Krishna somehow you're giving me a way to repeat what you're saying, but if you would like me to go, the explanation that I've heard is so Bhagavan, yes, is the highest realization. And when it said that when we reach Bhagavan realization, we realize the impersonal Brahman liberation and the localized Paramatma realization. And what that means is that we basically realize all the benefits of one realizing that realization. And what is that? So when one realizes Brahman realization, it's Brahma Buddha. I am eternal and I'm not this body. I'm pure spirit soul. So when one realizes Bhagavan realization, they realize that aspect. Because when one realizes the Brahman realization, that is what they realize. But when you realize Bhagavan realization, you automatically realize you're not this body. I'm pure spirit soul, Brahma Buddha. And then the Paramatma realization, what is that realization? Yes, they see God localized in the heart, but they see Vishnu, or they see God in every single living soul. So I think it's Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter, that one is able to see a brahmana, a cow, a dog eater, a dog, all equally. Why? Because they see Paramama, they see the soul, they see God in the heart. So when one realizes the localized realization, that is their realization. They're equal to all living entities. So when one realizes Bhagavan realization, they also realize that. So when you realize Bhagavan realization or Bhagavan, you get all the benefits of all the other two realizations. So it's covered. And so I'm just repeating what Gautam Prabhu explained to me, but that is the explanation.
Thank you. Very nice. Yeah, I like that. Great. Anything else?
Sorry, bro.
Any
I honestly don't remember what I answered. But
anyway, that's what you said, so it was wonderful. Any other questions or comments?
We're appreciating how wonderful is Krishna that he gives us access, and sometimes people might be, somebody mentioned yesterday, discouraged if you talk about a higher aspect, and they might think they may not be able to achieve that, so they might be discouraged. But actually, Nanda Maharaj was in chains in Kamsa's prison, but he gave charity to the Brahmins abundantly in his mind. Anybody can desire to be on the highest level. Anybody has that. Krishna's so wonderful that, we offer him a little fruit, a little water, a leaf with love, and then he reveals himself.
Yes.
So the access is incremental depending on on whether or not we want to go to the higher level. It's incremental and it seems like difficult, but if we do our humble best, then Krishna's pleased. It might not measure compared to somebody else, but Krishna's pleased if we do our humble best. We don't have to worry about comparing ourselves to anybody else. And as soon as we think ourselves better than anybody, what happens?
Fall.
Highest level, and they thought we're the best. And what happened? Krishna left. As soon as I think myself better than anybody, there you go. No Krishna. Right? You can hear that? And so we want to know that there is a higher level. We want to know that Krishna is so wonderful that he's offering that access to everyone. And we can be confident that it's available for us, anyone.
Yeah, if we don't understand what the prospect is, then we will think that what we're surrendering is too much. But if we understand what the end goal is, what prema actually is, then what we're actually giving is like very little compared to what we will receive. So we have to understand what the prospect is, what we will receive in our surrender. And so then it's like a very small thing to give, our whatever we Sharanagati, surrender, whatever we're surrendering is a very small price for the amazing treasure that we receive and we will receive.
No need to be discouraged.
Right.
No need to think I can't do that. I'm too fallen.
Yeah.
Krishna's so wonderful You can get it. He's offering it. Take it. Please come.
Yes.
Do your best.
Yeah. Lord Chaitanya brought the highest down to the lowest. So he's like sometimes like this. He's experiencing Mahabhav here, but also his hand like this, giving to the lowest.
King Nigriga, he became a lizard because he was involved in the karma kanda process, fruit of pseudo spiritual activity. And if you make a little mistake, then it's all useless and you fail. But if you do your best in Krishna service, you get the highest result. Sincerity, that's all.
Oh, looks like someone has their hand raised. Andalika.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to share because I guess my favorite point was simply the story of Nanda Maharaj sharing how Krishna runs, into his room and is afraid of thunderstorms.
Right.
And it reminded me of, I heard that in a lecture by Indrajumna Swami Maharaj, and he was speaking about the past time when Krishna was in Dwarka with many of his wives and sent, he sent his friend, I forget actually his friend, to deliver a message to the gopis and Brajabasis.
Uddhava.
And essentially, can you repeat that?
Uddhava?
Yes. And so he sent Uddhava to deliver the message. And then in the letter, he made that letter super dry because he was explaining himself as a supreme personality of Godhead. And so the gopis' reaction was like, well, Krishna, we are not philosophers. We are your lovers. What are you talking about? Why are you trying to speak to us as if we are just some yogis meditating at the banks of a river? Like, this is not how we love you. And why are you insulting us this way to even claim that we can love you this way? Because we don't. And then he also came to his parents. And then in the letter, Krishna, speaks about himself as the supreme personality, as the pure truth. And then his mother just says, he cannot be pure and he cannot be the supremely pure because he would always get in the mud, and then we would have to clean him and we would change his clothes 3 times a day because he would always get dirty. And his father just responds, he cannot be supreme truth because he would steal butter and we would have to chase him and always resolve this issue of him stealing butter from people. So I just wanted to share that because I think that these are just such a sweet examples of how that love flows from the highest realization of Krishna and that relationship with him, and also I think it is really beautiful to meditate on that as well, how it is so personal that they are not seeing him as supreme personality of Godhead. They really just have that relationship.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yes, the gopis are the greatest devotees, and they're from if you look at it in one way, they're very simple. They're just milkmaids and mothers and wives of cowherds. They're not like some really very intellectual or very austere or very it's very very simple things. So that speaks a lot about the nature of love, spiritual love. Anyway, thank you everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank
Have a
you
great
so
rest of
much,
your day.
Namarasa Prabhu.
Hey, Bo.
Namarasa Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.